Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of Around the Slice. We are part of the Around the Slice podcast network, which is home to Around the Slice and the Around the Slice fantasy football show. Now, on today's episode of Around the Slice, we are going to stack up the defensive rosters of the AFC, all four AFC East teams. So, Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots. We're going to give them a rating on a scale of 1 to 5. We're going to go through all positions. So, defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. If you want to see last week's video, last week on the offense side of the ball, we did the same thing for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and of course, ended with offensive line. A lot of great feedback on that video. So, we're going to do the defensive side of the ball today on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 meaning it's a failure / awful group. 2 being it's a below average group, but it still has a lot to be desired. 3 is perfectly middle of the road average. 4 is above average. And 5 is excellent / superb. Excellent, I guess you would say, rather. And then there's some gray area in between, like 4.25, 4.5, 3.5, stuff like that. But I'll explain it as we go. So let's get into it. Let's just, without further ado, dive into it with defensive tackle. At number 1, I will reveal the rating after I say the specific players that are on the team. At number 1, coming in as the best defensive tackle group as a whole. Remember, this isn't just your top 2 starting defensive tackles. Just like I said last week, it isn't your top 2 starting wide receivers. This isn't just your top 2 starting defensive tackles, because defense line rotates a lot. This is the group as a whole. So 4, in some cases 5 deep. But coming in at number 1, I think the Buffalo Bills have the best defensive tackle room / group, however you want to frame it, in the entirety, in the whole, in the entire AFC East. I think they have 2 absolute stud starters, in Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones. And if you've known me on this podcast, anytime before this podcast, if you know me as friends, family, or just around me a lot during Bills games, pregame, postgame, whatever, you know that Ed Oliver, the first 4 years of his career, I didn't label him a bust, but he was pretty disappointing for a number 9 overall pick. Touted as a guy who's really athletic, but we knew that coming in. He was really athletic, undersized defensive tackle in terms of a height and weight combo both, but he didn't really show off that pass rush arsenal that was promised coming out of college, coming out of Houston into the NFL. 2019 and 20, down years for him. It was pretty quiet. But his third year in the league, like so many other players, 2021, he didn't break out, but he showed some flashes. And then 2022, I feel like he reverted to his old ways of disappointment. I know it sounds harsh to say, but he kind of reverted to his old ways. He can never be consistent. Well, this past year, in 2023, the Bills notched him in with a extension for the long haul with a 5-year contract extension. I can't remember the exact deals, but all I know is 5 years and exact details, I should say. It was 5 years with $17 million per year. That made him like the 14th or 15th highest paid defensive tackle in the league. But in my opinion, not in my opinion, it did. What I'm trying to say is, in my opinion, it was at the time. It happened in June 2023, so a few months before the season had kicked off and started still. I didn't like it. I questioned Brandon Beane, and I think a lot of people other do, but for me, especially personally, I didn't like it. And he shut me up right away. I mean, from week 1 on, he was a massive, massive disruptive force, and he nearly tripled his career high in sacks. So you have Ed Oliver as your starting 3-tech, right? As your pass rush specialist on the interior. And surprisingly, he's a really good run defender for being an undersized defensive tackle, which is awesome. And then at your number 2 defensive tackle spot, you could argue he's just as good as Ed Oliver, maybe just an older version of Ed Oliver, and Daquan Jones. You could argue that the first 3 games before he tore his pec against the Jaguars in week 4, the whole London debacle and Sean McDermott ruining that whole thing, that whole trip, rather, I should say, he was playing Daquan Jones, Daquan Jones was playing as good as any defensive tackle in the entire league. We knew he was a stalwart We knew he was an elite run stopper, but what surprised me really the most was his pass rush moves, his pass rush versatility for key third down stops, key fourth down stops. I knew he was an elite run defender, and so did everybody else, but I wasn't expecting the pass rush. I mean, his pass rush win rate for the first 3 weeks was elite. It was through the roof. He was like number one in pass rush win rate like the first 3 weeks of the season before he tore his pec against the Jaguars in London, as I said a few seconds ago. He was unbelievable. So I wasn't expecting that pass rush. So, I mean, when he came back from the torn pec for the last 2 games of the season, yeah, it took him, let's say, a game and a half to get back. But in the playoffs, he was a disruptive force again. So I'm really encouraged by coming back from an injury. As a run defender, those guys last a long time in the league. Like Daquan Jones is 32, 33 years old. I think he's 33. Daquan Jones is 33 years old, and he's still an elite run defender. And now, this late in his career, he's just developing these pass moves to go along with, obviously, Ed Oliver's now, who's an elite pass rusher and especially a good run defender. So that is an elite 1-2 combo up front with Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones. And then this isn't being talked about enough as your third defensive tackle, Austin Johnson, who I think the last couple years for the Chargers, he didn't have the stats that like jump off the page in terms of box score and pure raw stats, like the sack numbers, the tackle for loss numbers, whatever, what have you. Because I think he was playing out of position under Brandon Staley. First of all, who's a quote-unquote labeled defensive mastermind, defensive guru, and his defenses were always horrible in run defense. But Austin Johnson, now there's not much pass rush versatility there, but I think he is a pretty good run stopper, and people aren't, Bills fans, Bills Mafia especially, people are kind of underrating Austin Johnson, just like in the same vein that I feel like people aren't realizing and underrating Bills fans, especially what Matt Collins can do in this offense as an elite special teamer, a special teams ace and whatever else. Austin Johnson, he can play the 1 tech, he can play the 3 tech, and he's not an elite run stopper like Daquan Jones, but he's a surprisingly good run defender like Ed Oliver, and you don't want him rushing off the edge like the Chargers had him doing the last couple of years. He was played opposition there, but I'm really, really excited for this. It's only a 1-year deal, but it is what it is, and I really like it. Next, your fourth defensive tackle. This goes 5 deep, but your fourth defensive tackle, Dwayne Carter, rookie out of Duke. He will be the direct backup to Ed Oliver. He will be the direct backup to Ed Oliver at 3 tech. With a pass rush arsenal off the charts coming out of college. He was known as a backfield disruptor. He put up numbers for all 4 years at Duke. He's an experienced guy. Yes. Is he a bit of an older prospect? Yes, 23. He'll be 24 next year already. Going into his second season, he'll be 24 years old. But I think that's kind of overrated, not stat, but an overrated kind of like thing that people look at. I wasn't the biggest fan of this pick when it happened first back in April in the 3rd round out of Duke. But I've warmed up to it a lot because you have Austin Johnson, who's the direct backup to Daquan Jones, a really good run defender. And then you have Dwayne Carter, who can learn from Ed Oliver. This isn't Ed Oliver's successor because Ed Oliver is still going to be here for 5 or 6 more years. But Ed Oliver's, I'm not going to say he's a tweener, but he can line up on the edge. It's rare that the Bills utilize this, but he can line up on the edge if you want him to on certain quote-unquote NASCAR packages on 3rd down, on 4th down, 3rd long and late downs. And then your defensive tackle duo inside can possibly Daquan Jones and Dwayne Carter, or Austin Johnson and Dwayne Carter, or even, heck, Dwayne Carter and Ed Oliver if Ed Oliver stays in the A or B gap, which he does 99% of the time without rarely moving the edge. But he can do the edge, so I'm kind of getting off track here, but I really like the versatility of this whole group, and especially Dwayne Carter. He's very athletic, and I've warmed up with this pick a lot in the last few months since April. And then the 5th guy here, he might not make the roster. He may make the roster. He's very much on the roster bubble. I don't really know much about him. I'll have to do some research, but Deshaun Williams, people say there's still some untapped potential here because people say last year with the Panthers, he barely got playing time. And when he did get playing time, he was severely played out of position. So yeah, I don't know whether to be low on this guy. I don't know whether to be high in this guy, but I'm going to give as a whole the group of Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Austin Johnson, Dwayne Carter, and then Deshaun Williams that's firmly on the roster bubble. Gotta do some more research. A perfect 5. Remember, 1 to 5. So a perfect 5. You have 2 stud starters in Oliver and Jones, and then maybe you get some found money with Deshaun Williams firmly on the roster bubble, but then you have exceptional backup / depth in Austin Johnson and Dwayne Carter. And the reason I'm really encouraged by the depth of Austin Johnson, Dwayne Carter is because last year, like when Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones went off the field, and when Daquan Jones was injured for basically the whole year after week 4 and so on after that, like when Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones went off the field, it was like, for Bills fans specifically, it was like, oh my God, we're really hurting here. Tim Settle is coming on the field. Jordan Phillips is coming on the field. I guess I won't include Poona Ford as being disappointing. Not his fault, though. Maybe he was disappointing, but I think it was the Sean McDermott's fault and Eric Washington's D-line coach's fault, who's now the defensive coordinator in Chicago with the Bears. It was kind of their fault for kind of not knowing where he plays in the edge and the interior. I thought every time he got in there, he was really good, but this besides the point. That's last year. But my point is the backup / depth of Austin Johnson, Dwayne Carter, even Deshaun Williams to an extent is maybe found money. If you hit on that, is way miles better, in my opinion, than Jordan Phillips, Poona Ford, and Tim Settle. Those guys, like when Oliver and Johnson went off the field, we were getting gashed in the run game. Oliver and Jones, I should say, rather, not Austin Johnson. So I'm going to give this a perfect 5. Stud starters, really good depth, and a guy who can be found money. Just got to do more research on Deshaun Williams, who, according to all accounts and reports, he's untapped potential. And some other podcasters even say, who are more versed with the Panthers than me, that he was Carolina Panthers than me. He was played opposition 99% of the time. 2, New England Patriots. Again, let me go through the players and reveal the rating 1 to 5 scale. We have Christian Barmore, who I think is an absolute stud. I don't think he's the I got to choose my words carefully here. I don't think he's the pass rusher that Ed Oliver is at this point in his career. Christian Barmore has had a better overall career in their young careers than Ed Oliver, I'd say. But Ed Oliver had the better single year, so it's kind of last year, so in 2023, so it's kind of a wash. But I'd say Christian Barmore is a lot better run defender. Like, he's an elite run defender. Ed Oliver is a surprisingly good run defender. Like, he has some surprising moments here and there. But Christian Barmore, week in and week out, game in and game out, he is an elite run defender. And just running backs aren't getting past him. And then you have like a combination to start next to him of Devon Godshaw, who is just a true like blob in the middle. Like, don't let your gaps get too out of control. Like, he's just a true like blob in the middle, nose tackle. Those guys are asked to be. And then sometimes he rotates with this next guy in Dietrich Wise, who's kind of a weird like defensive tackle / defensive end pass rusher hybrid. I don't know. The Patriots have a lot of hybrid players like that. And then you have true depth players in the roster bubble and Daniel Quale and Tristan Hill. I think the Patriots have, between the Bills and Patriots, the Patriots have the best defensive tackle, like individually between those two teams, and Christian Barmore, but I don't think the Patriots have near the depth that the Bills have. In the other starter, I think Daquan Jones is much better at this point than Devon Godshaw and Dietrich Wise. So I'm going to give the New England Patriots, for their defensive tackle room as a whole, a rating of a 3.75. Like, not even near the Bills as a 5 for all the reasons I just explained. 3, New York Jets. Quinn Williams, absolute stud. I think you can make the argument that, like, there's, for the best defensive tackles in the entire league, there's Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence, and Quinn Williams. I think Chris Jones is, like, by a small gap margin, but he's the best defensive tackle in the league. And then, but I would hear you out if you make the argument. You can make the argument that it's a 1A, 1B, 1C situation for top defensive tackles named Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence, and Quinn Williams, as I just mentioned. Quinn Williams, elite pass rusher for a defensive tackle of his size. Quinn Williams, elite run stuffer, very athletic for his size as well. The only pause I have with this group is they have Solomon Thomas, who once again, there's a lot of these guys in this division. Solomon Thomas, as whether it's a pass rusher / defensive end off the edge or a superstar over a kind of an undersized interior guy as a defensive tackle rushing up the middle next to Quinn Williams. I don't think he fits particularly well in either spot. I guess he's okay as an interior defensive lineman, as a defensive tackle. But the reason I'm not really liking the depth here next to Quinn Williams, Dean, Javon Kinlaw is probably going to be the other starter next to him, and Leki Fotu. I mean, Leki Fotu was kind of just riding on the Cardinals the last few years. And then Javon Kinlaw, he's another guy that's never really been able to figure it out as a former first-round pick by the 49ers in 2020, whether he was playing off the edge in some sub packages, or is playing off the interior. There's been attitude concerns. There's been overweight concerns. There's been kind of he's just never really gotten to it. So I don't really like the depth here after Quinn Williams between Javon Kinlaw, Leki Fotu, and Solomon Thomas. Solomon Thomas and Javon Kinlaw have just never really figured it out, as I just said a few seconds ago. And then Leki Fotu has just been kind of riding on the Arizona Cardinals with the Cardinals for the last few years. But I'm going to get, just because of Quinn Williams, if there was no Quinn Williams here, this would be a terrible grade. But I'm going to give this a 3.5 because Quinn Williams is an absolute beast for my money, and I don't think it's really arguable. Arguable, is that even a word? I don't think you can really argue it. That's better way to say it. I don't think you can really argue that Quinn Williams is the best defensive tackle in this division, the best defensive tackle in the AFC East, the top 3, maybe top 2 defensive tackle in the entire league. And then at 4, we got the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, a lot of transition here, losing Christian Wilkins to the Raiders. I think the Raiders. Actually, I don't think I was going to say they overpaid by a bit, but this isn't about the Raiders. I think they were perfectly fine with that. So they lost Christian Wilkins. Zach Sealer, can he be the guy at defensive tackle? Because he was always for the last couple of years, and then last year he broke out, made a household name for himself. Can he be the guy, though? Because he was always working off of Christian Wilkins. I think Zach Sealer, though, provides so much and combines so well of his pass rush versatility and his inside-out versatility and his run-stopping versatility and acumen. I think he's still good. But after that, I like Tyler Tart. He's been on the – he kind of ended weirdly last year. The Titans thing, they just flat-out released him. It was reported that he requested to be released, but then it was reported that he got into an altercation with some of the coaches, Mike Vrabel. And then he goes to Houston with the Texans. Then he's sitting out there till middle – to end of April, and then the Dolphins just kind of swoop in and sign him. I like Tyler Tart. He's just aging, so. And then after Sealer and Tart, though, they're just throwing darts at the board, man. I feel like between Benito Jones, Jonathan Harris, and Neville Gallimore, hopefully two of those guys hit. I'm just not counting on it. Zach Sealer is on his way to being absolute stud defensive tackle in this league. Tyler Tart can still get the job done, I feel like, after bouncing around and ending last season weirdly. And then throwing darts with team, as I just said, Benito Jones, Jonathan Harris, and Neville Gallimore. So I'm going to give this Miami Dolphins defensive tackle room/group of 3.25. Next, defensive end. The New York Jets, their group consists of Hassan Reddick, who is an elite pass rusher, franchise cornerstone. I know he's 29 years old and approaching 30. But those pass rushers, just like I said about interior defensive linemen, can really kind of last in this league till their mid-30s. Don't have Von Miller. That's besides the point. But I think Hassan Reddick is the type that can do that. I mean, just 2 years ago, he was top 5 league in sacks, and he helped the Eagles to having being top 5 in sacks all time. They had 70 total sacks in 2022, 2 years ago. So Hassan Reddick, hopefully Robert Saleh gets him on the phone and is able to talk to him, because he said that he hasn't talked to him. Like, he flat out said it. And then apparently his son Reddick was like cosplaying in Japan and some play or whatever, cosplaying in Japan, and he missed mandatory minicamp because of that. But also he wants a new contract. I don't know. The whole thing's weird. But besides the contract point, putting the contract aside and hold out, if I even call it that, I think is a franchise cornerstone. And then Jermaine Johnson, who absolutely broke out in every way you wanted last year if you're a Jets fan. I mean, this guy's story is unbelievable. He starts at a community college, EMCC. I think EMCC, I think it was Eastern Mississippi Community College. I think that's where he started. And then he transfers to Florida State for his last 2 years. And now he's in the NFL. And in his second year in the league last year, he absolutely broke out. I mean, his run defense is elite. His pass rush moves are elite. I think Jermaine Johnson there's so many elite pass rushers in this league. I'm not going to list them all off. You know who they are. You know who they are. And then, but Jermaine Johnson's the next one. And then Will McDonald. They took him 12th overall last year. April. So 2023 draft, NFL draft, I should say. They took him 12th overall. He was severely overdrafted. I thought he was a late first round pick / early second round pick. Actually, I really thought he was more of a mid second round pick to late second round pick. I thought he was severely overhyped, and they took him like top 15. And like, he was half the season, he was healthy scratch. Half the season, he was inactive. But I don't think he'll explode this year. But I think he'll take some considerable steps. And then as a fourth pass rusher, Michael Clemens, who long and late downs. Once again, we use this term all the time, man. Third and long, fourth long and late downs. He's a specialized pass rusher as a sub rusher in certain packages, in certain blitz packages. He's been reliable. He's been a reliable veteran for the past 2 years for the Jets. And then fifth defensive end here, I'm not really impressed with this, but Takk McKinley, after being a first-round pick of the Falcons all those years ago, I think it was 2016 at this point. He was part of that elite Super Bowl defense, and 28-3, bad Patriots memory. He's trying to reclaim his career. So, but between all that, headlined by Son Reddick and Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald looking to take a few considerable step, and then Takk McKinley is whatever, kind of a reclamation project if you can hit on it. And then Michael Clemens has been a reliable veteran for the past few years for the Jets. I'm going to give this group a 5. Like, I like the depth. And the star power between Hassan Reddick and Jermaine Johnson is really unbelievable. So, yeah. 2 Miami Dolphins. The top 2 of Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb is an elite duo. Let's make no mistake about it. Like, even as a Bills fan, I recognize they're an elite duo. Like, Jalen Phillips, I feel like, is on the very brink, the very tip of the iceberg, if you will, of getting like 15 plus sacks, like 15 to 18 sacks, somewhere in that range, like well into double digits, pushing 20 sacks. He's that talented. The problem is Jalen Phillips tore his Achilles on Thanksgiving, and Bradley Chubb tore his ACL on Christmas when he should have never been in the game because the Dolphins were like blowing whoever they were playing, I forgot, in December out this past December, this past season in December of 2023 around Christmas time. He should never been in the game. So, but it sounds like Jalen Phillips has a pretty decent shot to be ready for week 1 off his torn Achilles, because that's a couple months less recovery time. Not a doctor, but I read somewhere it's a couple month less recovery time than torn ACL. So it sounds like Jalen Phillips has a pretty decent shot to be ready for week 1 for the Dolphins off the edge. And then Bradley Chubb will likely start in the IR or the PUP list and miss the first 4 weeks of the season, which by rule you have to. But the third and fourth pass rush here, like Shaq Barrett, I feel like Shaq Barrett has become underrated, not overhated, but people kind of gloss over him when you're talking about pass rushers. Yeah, he's north of 30. Yeah, he's not going to have that one season like 2019 where he had 10 plus sacks. And I remember that season because, let's see, it was my junior year of high school that year. So I was talking about my friends. I'm like, look at Shaq Barrett. He's like really exploding off the ball. Like, he had like 5 sacks in the first 3 weeks. Like, he was man on a mission that year. So I really like that they added Shaq Barrett to this mix. And then Calais Campbell is a really nice hedge. I know he's 39 years old, but he's not elite anymore, but he's still an elite run stuffer and a decent enough pass rusher. Actually last year in Atlanta with the Falcons, he lined up more in the A and B gaps than on the edge. So he lined up more as as kind of an actual defensive tackle, an actual defensive end pass rusher off the edge. So that's interesting with that versatility. We know um, how sorely the Miami Dolphins interior group next to Zach Sealer and maybe even Tyler Tart throw in the mix will miss him. So he's all over the place. Next, Chop Robinson and Mo Camara. I really liked Mo Camara as a 5th-round pick out of Colorado State. I want him as a deep sleep. Well, not deep. By the time we got to the process, people knew about him. But as a sleeper, decent enough sleeper. As a sleeper for the Bills, Buffalo Bills, obviously they didn't get him. They got Javon Solomon instead, which, okay, whatever. And then Chop Robinson, I thought he was an early 2nd-round pick when most people thought he was a mid to late 1st-round pick. And the Dolphins took him at 21. I thought that was not severely overdrafted. I thought they overdrafted him by like half a round. He should have went like early to mid 2nd round, in my opinion. I'll give him the benefit of doubt, maybe early 2nd round, I'll say. But because his pass rush moves are off the charts. His swim moves, pass rush moves, like bend, technique are awesome. His athleticism is off the charts, like every Penn State player ever. Micah Parsons, Arnold Ebiketie, Abdul Carter coming out in the 2025 draft, 25 NFL draft. But that's besides the point. But Chop Robinson is just raw, not much production. He only had 11 sacks in 3 years at Penn State. And I just mentioned Mo Camara. So I'm going to give this Miami Dolphins group a 4.75, guys. I really, really love this group. If Jalen Ferris, Bradley Chubb never suffered those injuries, they were perfectly fine. This group goes 6 deep, and I'm giving it a 5, perfect 5. But I'm giving it a 4.75, a little notch below, 0.25 below, just because I'm mindful of the injuries to both Phillips and Chubb. It sounds like one of them, more Phillips, will be ready, even though he'll be playing through injury most likely. New England Patriots, their pass rush group consists, their top 2, Matthew Judon and Josh Uche, I feel like is a really underrated duo in the landscape of the AFC East, especially, but more so especially, I should say rather, the scope of the entire league. Because people say, well, Matthew Judon is old. Well, Matthew Judon missed most of last season other than 3 or 4 games. And I just want to get this out of the way, by the way. I don't understand the trade rumors around Matthew Judon right now. Like, those are baseless rumors, in my opinion. I don't even know who started those, like the Boston Herald, the Boston Globe, one of those new local news agencies / news outlets in the New England / Boston area started that, and I don't really understand it. Like, I know Matthew Judon's like 32. Yeah, he's 32. He's 32 years old. At 32, maybe. But I still think he has every step as he was like 26, 27, somewhere around there. And then Josh Uche, yes, Josh Uche has severe, and I mean, watch on my screen, he has severe limitations in the run game. He has trouble kind of with containing rush, so he has severe limitations as a run defender. But he is one twitched up dude. I don't mean twitched up and like huge, but athletic. He is a speed rusher through and through. I keep talking about long and late downs, 3rd and long, 4th long, around there. Like, he can get the job done. Like, he's not going to beat a guard with power, but he can put a nasty swim move on a tackle, and like, he's gone. You got to get that ball out quick. So high praise for Josh Uche. He's just severe limitations in the run game. And then Keon White off the edge. I'm really expecting big things from Keon White this season for the Patriots. Keon White, maybe not the speediest pass rusher like Josh Uche is, but they complement each other really well, because I think Keon White is a much better run defender than Josh Uche is. So that's how that situation is looking like. And then a couple like kind of long in the tooth veterans, if you will, but still serviceable at the very least. Anthony Jennings and Juwan Bentley. I think Jennings is a little better at this time, and Bentley is a little older. But, so I'm going to give this pass rush group, a 4.25 for the Patriots, because I really like a kind of overlooked duo in Matthew Judon and Josh Uche. You'll just have to know the severe limitations in the run game with Josh Uche. And then Keon White as a 3rd pass rusher. I really like how he kind of complements, works off of Josh Uche, kind of opposite skill sets. And then 2, maybe not high ceiling at this point, but 2 high floor, stable veterans. You know what you're going to get in Frank Jennings and Juwan Bentley. So 4.25 for that. Next, at 4, I'm sorry, this pains me to say for my own team, but I think like easily this isn't really close in my opinion. Unfortunately, the Buffalo Bills have the worst pass rush group in this division. I'm going to say right now, like usually I say the names first of the players and then give you a rating. I'm going to give a rating right now since it's my own team, what this whole practice is about really. Buffalo Bills, 3.25 for the defensive line, pass rush, edge, whatever you want to frame it like. Say it rather, I should say. I think it's just a slightly above average group, and that's about it. I don't see much room for mobility here at 3.25. You have Greg Rousseau. I'm going to predict him to break out this year again, but I've predicted him to break out for the last 3 years. This will be the third year in a row I predicted him to break out. His physical tools are off the charts. He's 6'7", 270. They call him Groot for a reason because he looks like Groot from the MCU movies. He looks like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. The way he's built with power, speed, athleticism, he combines it all so well. But I'm not sure he's a per se sack artist per se. Like he's never had above 6 sacks in his career. And then AJ Epinesa right after him is presumably this defensive end 2 on this team, the second best defensive end. I like AJ Epinesa, and I like that they re-signed him to a pretty modest deal. But I don't know if AJ Epinesa is a full-time impact starter. So I think you have a lot of questions with him as I just don't know if he's a full-time instant starter. I think full-time impact starter, I should say rather. I think he's a fine third defensive end. He's not like overly athletic. He just does things at a very good level, nothing like upper echelon though. And then third, Von Miller. I just don't know what to think with Von Miller. I did that motion with my hands because like, what are we doing here? Like, unless he has 8 to 10 sacks somewhere around there, even more. I'll say unless he has 8 to 10 sacks, like he's going to be released next June. You know that little sprinkled in post June 1st cut that teams get 2 of those a year. Yeah, well that will be him in post June 1st, post June 1st, 2025. Yeah, years 2025. I just don't know. Anything you get from him, any sacks you get from him is found money. I just don't know what to think. I don't know. I just don't. And then you have Dawuane Smoot. Now, I don't know what version of him we're going to get. Are we going into 2022 positive version of Dawuane Smoot where he was not a game wrecker, but he was a very, very steady veteran with the Jaguars? Or are we going to get 2023 of Dawuane Smoot coming off a torn ACL at the end of the previous year where he just never looked the same and kind of was just didn't get on the field much? I don't know. And then lastly, Javon Solomon, who he has pretty severe limitations in the run game, but that's okay because you have Groot, you have Greg Rousseau. You have Groot for that, who's just an elite run stopper off the edge at defensive end, who can also contain rush and kind of flip inside as a pseudo hybrid defensive tackle if you need to. But talk about Javon Solomon. His production at Troy in 3 years at Troy, he had 25 freaking sacks. That's insanity. That's wild, isn't it? Like, there's a player like I can't believe I just found this out, but DeMarcus Ware went to Troy and he didn't put up nearly the production as Javon Solomon just did there the last 4 years. So, Javon Solomon, like that guy's got pass rush moves for days, just severe limitations in the run game. But I'm giving this a 3.25. It's not much room for mobility because I hate that there's questions with all 5 of these guys. You have Greg Rousseau, who is he ever going to be a sack artist and get more than 6 sacks in his career? You have AJ Epinesa, who I like that they re-signed him a pretty modest deal, but I don't think he's that guy that is a full-time, high-end impact starter as a second defensive end on the team. You have Von Miller, who anything you get from him is found money. And like I said, if he doesn't have 8 to 10 sacks, he's gone. Post June 1st, 2025, he's gone. And then Dawuane Smoot, which version are we going to see of him? The 2022 version, 2023 version of last year, negatively. And then Javon Solomon, pass rush move for days, productions for days in college, 4 years at Troy, 25 sacks over 4 years, and 12 last year in 2023, but severe limitations in the run game. So 3.25. I hate to say about my own team, but concerned about this. And going into training camp, I feel like this isn't a storyline that people aren't talking about nearly enough. So I wanted to bring it to the forefront. And then linebacker for the Bills, you have obviously still a franchise cornerstone, even though coming off a fractured leg, and I think there was a torn ACL in there as well. Matt Milano, who's just like an athletic freak. The only thing I have with him is he's always missing tackles, it seems like, but it seems like the whole Bills defense does, except maybe for Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas to an extent, but everyone else, maybe Taylor Abdu, they miss tackles. So Matt Milano's missed tackle percent is always around 12, 13%. Sometimes like even like in the low 20s, like 21, 22%, like at least 20%. So that can't happen. I love him. And then Terrell Bernard, if you heard me on this podcast, I was not the only one saying this. If you heard me on this podcast saying going into and coming out of training camp last year in the preseason, if you remember correctly, Terrell Bernard tweaked his hamstring in preseason, so he didn't play in any of the 3 preseason games. So it led the path for Tyler Dotson that kind of quote unquote capitalizes now on the Seahawks, by the way, if you didn't know that. If you capitalize, if you will, and become that starting middle linebacker, but like he has severe limitations in coverage, and like between Tyrell Dotson, Dorian Williams, Balin Spector, and Terrell Bernard at this time last year, maybe a little later in late August, early September, we were saying that we have no starting, like, do we even have a starting caliber middle linebacker MLB? Do we have a starting caliber middle linebacker even on this roster? I didn't think so, but Terrell Bernard shut me up, just like Ed Oliver, and like he was amazing. I think back to that game in Washington, in Landover, Maryland. That's where it is, their stadium, against the Commanders, against the Commanders there in DC. He had like 2 sacks, an interception, and a forced fumble, and 1 defensive play of the week that week. AFC defensive play of the week that week. And then I really like between third and fourth linebacker, between Dorian Williams and Nicholas Morrow, kind of fighting for that LB3 job, that third linebacker job. And we see that's crucial for special teams. We see more and more teams are starting to play 3 linebackers to combat teams starting and playing 2 running backs at once, teams starting and playing 12 personnel with 2 tight ends at once. You need bigger bodied linebackers to do that. And Dorian Williams and Nicholas Morrow are both bigger bodies, and that's encouraging. When I love Matt Milone and Terrell Bernard, but they're like the smallest linebacker doing the entire NFL. So, and then, so I like, and back to Dorian Williams, I like Dorian Williams, but like when he has to process and diagnose a play, whether it's in coverage or a run fit or stuff a running back, when he has to process and diagnose, he just looks way out of his element there. Last year when he had to process and diagnose in the open field and make an open field tackle like that, when he had to do that, he just looked way overmatched, like overthinking things. So I think it might be good for Nicholas Morrow to finish as an LB3, but your third and fourth, maybe even fifth and sixth linebackers in this case have to play special teams. Speaking of that, I think you have 3 really bottom of the depth or guys, bottom of the roster guys, firmly on the roster bubble, all 3 of them, between Eddie Ulufosio, Balin Spector, who I think there's really good special teams upside with those 2, and then Deion Jones, who's trying to kind of as a reclamation project, just like Takk McKinley, but totally different position with the Jets. He is trying to reclaim his career. I was about to say he was trying to reclaim his career as a former first-round pick of the Falcons. Again, then that Falcons elite Super Bowl defense, 2016 as a rookie. And he was considered one of the very best linebackers in the game, like maybe even the best for a 2 or 3 year stretch. Then after that, shoulder injuries derailed him. He bounced around from Cleveland to the Panthers practice squad. Now he's in the Bills trying to fight for a 5th or 6th linebacker spot. So, but if he can contribute on special teams, that's fine. So I'm going to give this group a 5 for the Bills linebackers. 2, an absolute stud of a starting unit in Matt Milone and Terrell Bernard. And then I really like that Dorian Williams and Nicholas Morrow battling out for LB3. Nicholas Morrow, steady veteran. Dorian Williams, who maybe in a year or 2 will be ready to take on that third linebacker role. In maybe 3 or 4 years, if you move on from Matt Milano, I don't want to think about that, but if you do, there's Dorian Williams. Then you have some high floor, maybe even upside with Eddie Ulufosio, Balin Spector, and Deion Jones. Perfect 5 for me. 2, New York Jets. You got C.J. Mosley, who just, he seems like ageless wonder, C.J. Mosley, like he is a tackling machine. And another guy who's tackling machine is his running mate, Quincy Williams. Quincy Williams, I mean, the last 2 or 3 years, mainly the last 2 years in 2022 and then 2023 last year, respectively, he's been unbelievable. He's been like top 5 in the league in tackles. Like he flies around. You have two linebackers that fly around, then CJ Mosley as like pass rush upside and disguise like not disguise coverage. What do you call it? Disguise blitz and disguise pressure or whatever. I'm gonna give this group a 5 because you have two starters in CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams. I don't like the depth. The depth's okay here. Zaire Barnes is a fine enough LB3 as a third linebacker, but Chaz Surratt and Jamie Sherwood, really two like high on special teamers. Chaz Surratt is a very, very good special teamer. We saw that in the Hall of Fame game last year and over all 3 preseason games last year if you watch the Jets in preseason. So I'm going to give this group a 5. The depth is a bit lacking, but between CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams, that's as elite as it gets as a duo. And CJ Mosley is aging like ageless wonder, if you will. 3, Dolphins. David Long Jr. and Jordan Brooks. Those are their 2 starters at linebacker. There's not much ceiling there, but there's a lot of trust there, and there's a lot of floor there. Jordan Brooks was taken over Patrick Queen in the 2019 draft. Jordan Brooks taken by the Seahawks. Patrick Queen, who's on the Steelers, but back then, first round 2019 draft, like I just said a few seconds ago, taken by the Ravens. I'll never forget that the Seahawks took Brooks over Queen. But David Long Jr., who I think he had a better year 2 years ago in 2022 with the Titans, with the Tennessee Titans than he did last year in 2023 with the Dolphins. I think there's a decent enough floor here between David Long Jr. and Jordan Brooks. And then okay, I guess I'm not really into this depth between Channing Tindall, who just never sees the field for some reason, is it going in his 3rd year out of Georgia, part of this elite Georgia defense as a part-time player, though. Anthony Walker, stable veteran. Cameron Good and Duke Riley, special teams guys. I guess I'm going to give this group a 3.25. It's slightly above average. Hopefully David Long Jr. can bounce back from kind of a down year. And then Jordan Brooks, he's never really figured out in the league. Like he has pretty severe coverage limitations, pass coverage. He's an okay tackler, but he misses a lot of tacklers. His form is good. I don't know. There's not much upside with this group. 3.25. 4, Patriots. I'm going to give it I'll just reveal this rating right now. I'm going to give it a perfect 3, like middle of the road, average. It's fine. No big deal. Like Raekwon McMillan, Sione Takitaki, and Jelani Tavai, those guys would not be starting linebackers for anyone else in the league, but they work for the Patriots, like in their system, in Gerard Mayo's new system. Gerard Mayo coming over, funny enough, from being linebackers coach to head coach, like they work. Like maybe Raekwon McMillan would be a starter on our team, but definitely not Sione Takitaki and Jelani Tavai. They'd be like sub-package guys. They'd be like special teamers. And then you had 2 guys in Martin Mapu, who's an interesting like linebacker safety hybrid going in the 2nd year out of the small school, like one of the small schools in the country in like Sacramento State. Are they FCS? Yeah, they got to be FCS. And then Christian Ellis, who like okay special teams. Like Raekwon McMillan, Sione Takitaki, and Jelani Tavai work for them, like in their system. They work for nobody else, but for them, they're fine. Martin Mapu, who does he have safety? Is he a linebacker? I'm including him at linebackers here because he's too big to be a safety. Maybe he's a little small as a linebacker. I'm going to have him as linebacker. And then Christian Ellis, special teams upside, maybe. I'm going to give this a 3 just because I think these guys fit for their system. I keep saying it for nobody else, but these guys fit for their system. I'm going to give it a 3. Next, CB, cornerback. For the best corner group in the whole AFC East in the division is the Jets, in my opinion. You have like an absolute like all-pro. For my money, he's the second best corner in the game, but like maybe it's a 1A, 1B situation between Pat Surtain and the Broncos and Sauce Gardner on the Jets. But don't sleep on DJ Reed. Like he's an elite corner as well. Maybe like not the elite like Sauce Gardner, but he's elite as well. People gloss over him because of Sauce Gardner, but they play off of each other so well. And then I really like Michael Carter in the slot, stable veteran. And I really like Isaiah Oliver, also a stable veteran. because he was with if you recall, he was with the San Francisco 49ers last year. So he was with the 49ers last year, and he's a slot corner at heart, but they had him playing out of position at times they had him playing as like slot corner sometimes, but mainly outside corner. I think Isaiah Oliver still has the upside to play outside corner, especially in the Jet system under Robert Saleh. But I think his main at heart is slot corner, but he can be moved around. And then as kind of a like, not a hedge, but what am I trying to say? Kind of a special teams guy in Brandon Eccles. It's fine. It's whatever. I'm going to give this group a perfect 5. Like Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. I mean, they might be the best corner duo in the whole NFL. I'm pretty sure they are for my money. And then I really like the depth. Brandon Eccles, special teams, whatever. But I really like the depth between Isaiah Oliver and Michael Carter. And Isaiah Oliver can be a direct injury replacement for an outside corner or a slot corner with Michael Carter. So perfect 5 for that. Next, Buffalo Bills, in my opinion, have the second best cornerback room, corner room, whatever, in the AFC East in the division. You have Rasul Douglas, who maybe his athleticism has left a lot to be desired in that department, but he's an absolute ball hawk. Like the very first game as a Bill with the Bills, he had 2 interceptions against the Jets. And then a few weeks later, maybe like a month later, I don't remember. I know it was in early December, though. He had 2 interceptions against the Patriots off of Bailey Zappi, which, whatever, Bailey Zappi. But he had 2 interceptions off that. One of them was a pick six, where he ran it back for a touchdown for a pick six. And then Christian Benford, he's a surprisingly good athlete. He mixes man coverage and zone coverage so well. He's very, very good at both man coverage and zone coverage. Very good tackler. He's one of the few players, it seems like, in the Bills' defense over the last 2 years that has been such a good form tackler and such a reliable and consistent tackler and hasn't missed tackles. And then he unseated a first-round pick in Kyer Elam, and then who went to Florida, SEC, heralded first-round pick. Christian Benford, FCS player, went to Villanova, was picked in the 6th round. Like, he's become a dude. Like, I think he's become an elite corner, and the Bills will basically have 2 CB1s after this year, at the 2024 season, after this upcoming year, and Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford. And then Taron Johnson's slot is like so good. In my opinion, you have 1A, 1B, and 1C situation for best slot corners league between Trent McDuffie of the Chiefs, Mike Hilton of the Bengals, and then Taron Johnson of the Bills, obviously here. And then Kyer Elam, as a former first-round pick, I wouldn't say he's a bust, but his best attribute is ball hawking ability, and as a playmaker, very high-end athlete. The Bills just don't give him the opportunity enough. And I think that's because he's kind of grabby, if you will. He's kind of grabby with the penalties. He gets a lot of DPIs, unfortunately, and seems like in crucial spots too, more often than not. But Kyer Elam is kind of going to take the Dane Jackson role when Dane Jackson was here the last few years of being that direct guy off the bench for them. And then, but if either of Rasul Douglas or Christian Benford gets injured, you can slot in Kyer Elam. Hopefully he's up to par. And then lastly, Daquan Hardy. Day Hardy will be the direct backup to Taron Johnson. And I've been looking for this for a handful of years. So for the last 2 years, I've wanted a backup slot corner, a high ceiling backup slot corner, Taron Johnson, because they've thrown they've thrown darts at the board over the last few years in Saran Neal. That didn't work out. Like, oh, see you later. Off to Miami. We don't care about you. I'm kidding. But he's off to the Dolphins. When he played on defense, they tried to use his size sometimes in certain nickel packages and certain sub packages to guard like tight ends like Travis Kelce when they played Chiefs, or Mark Andrews when they played Ravens. Mainly Travis Kelce when they played Chiefs, and it was I'll admit it was a disaster. And then you had Cam Lewis trying to back up Taron Johnson as well, who I think he can play outside corner. He hasn't done it since college, though. He can play slot corner. He only did it if Taron Johnson get injured, which he did early in his career a lot, actually, the shoulder injuries. And safety, free and strong. I think he's best suited at safety at this point. So I really like a guy getting in the system as a rookie, and he's the electric returner. I think like this, the Bills don't have a clear kick and punt returner right now. Like, they don't have a clear returner right now. Day Hardy, there you go. Like electric returner, ran the high 4.4s at the NFL Combine. So I'm really liking the high ceiling there of Day Hardy. I'm going to give that group a 4.25. You have an absolute stud trio of your starting two outside corners and Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford and Taron Johnson in the slot. Then you have a backup slot to him, Day Hardy, who can also be one of the best returners in the NFL and the entire league just as a rookie. Then you have Kyrie Elam, a former first-round pick, who's hopefully up to par if any of Rasul Douglas or Christian Benford get injured. And then number 3, I'm going to give the Miami Dolphins corner group, I'll just tell you right now, a rating of a 4. Perfect slice down the middle, 4. Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller. I've been on record saying that Jalen Ramsey is kind of an overrated corner in this league. Maybe he's like top 10, the back end of top 10, like 7, 8, 7 to 10, somewhere in that range. But I don't think he's for sure like top 5. Like even when people argued like 3 or 4 years ago when he was in his prime at the Rams, like he was the best corner in the NFL, I just never bought it. But I mean, that's whatever. But Kendall Fuller's such a nice player. I think these guys, their best attributes are being moved around with Ramsey and Fuller specifically, obviously. I'm talking about here. Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller can be moved around being slot corner, outside corner. The reason why I didn't give it like a 4.25 or even a 4.5, pushing 5 maybe, is because the depth is lacking here. Kader Kohu, really, he was a pleasant surprise in 2022. 2 years ago, excuse me. His first year with the Dolphins as an undrafted free agent. They signed him as a UDFA, so undrafted, obviously. Nice surprise, pleasant surprise. Last year, though, Vic Fangio, which that was a disaster by players' accounts. Vic Fangio was having a flip-flop between outside corner, slot safety. He's best at slot corner, but even that hit or miss most of the time. And then you have a guy like Cam Smith, who maybe he's a slot corner, maybe he's an outside corner. I just don't know. I liked him enough coming out of South Carolina. And then you have Nick Needham, which he's probably never going to make the roster as a former first-round pick, which who cares? And then you have Saran Neal, just as long as he's never on defense, he's fine. But he's an elite special teamer, special teams ace. So I'm going to give this group a 4. It's really, you have an elite duo, in my opinion, even though I do think Jalen Ramsey is a little overrated. But Kendall Fuller, I think the world of. If you have an elite duo between Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller, and I don't think your starting slot corners are good enough. Very hit or miss between Kader Kohu, and then your depth is really lacking, in my opinion. So I'm going to give that group a 4. For Patriots, I'm going to give this group a 3.5. The group of Christian Gonzalez, who I am not exaggerating here when I say this. He could have had a Sauce Gardner-esque season on the way to Defense Rookie of the Year, just like Sauce did 2 years ago for the Jets in 2022. But unfortunately, Christian Gonzalez only played 4 games, and then he got injured for the rest of the year, placed on IR for the whole year, basically, other than the 4 games after that. He was a lockdown man, amazing tackler, amazing ball hawk, amazing. Like, he was perfect. And I still can't fathom how the Commanders thought it was a good idea. Like, how did they take, like, whoever made the decision should be fired, okay? Get that out of the way. How did they take Emmanuel Forbes over Christian Gonzalez? Like, I hate to praise the Patriots because they're the Patriots, whatever. But they got absolute home run steal in Christian Gonzalez. And then Jonathan Jones, like I think he can be slot corner and outside corner just as well. And then Marcus Jones, who is really dynamic athlete. I remember one game 2 years ago, the Patriots were so desperate for offensive firepower and so desperate for weapons. Bill Belichick was still there at the time. Bill Belichick put him on offense, and he gave him a quick screen, and the Bills defense missed a bunch of tackles, which they seem to do with the exception of a few players, but they seem to do it on a very consistent basis. And Marcus Jones scored an 80-yard screen pass into an 80 turned a screen pass, into an 80-yard touchdown. Bad memory, but we ended up demolishing them that game, so who cares? That's just one of my memories, though. And then 2 special teams guys / slot corner depth in Marco Wilson and Sean Wade. So I'm going to give this a 3.5. I think the world of Christian Gonzalez. I think he has a chance, a very good chance to win Comeback Player of the Year this year. Probably going to be Aaron Rodgers for all the pub and popularity and whatever. And NFL, whatever. And then Jonathan Jones is a steady veteran, whether it's outside or in the slot. And then Marcus Jones, again, whether it's outside or in the slot, very, very dynamic athlete. And he showed apparently he can be on offense too. Showed that against the Bills a couple years ago. And then Marco Wilson, Sean Wade, I think you need better depth than that. But I'm going to give this group a 3.5 because of all those reasons I just stated. Moving on. Last position. I know this has been a long journey, but last position. New England Patriots safety room, I think, is the very best in the entire division out of the 4 teams. Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers. Kyle Duggar is an elite safety, in my opinion. And then Jabril Peppers is just so good, man. I really wanted him badly for if Jordan Poyer wasn't going to come back. He's in the Dolphins now, too. Him and Surratt Neal going over to Miami. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, back to the topic at hand. If Jordan Poyer left in 2023 free agency, look, it sounded like he might have until the very last minute. I don't know what happened there. He came back. Whatever. Now he's got Dolphins. I really wanted Jabril Peppers, but the Patriots weren't going to let him go. Like, he was in the Giants at the time, and then he signed with he was in the Giants 3 years ago, and they signed with the Patriots. They re-signed. It's like, and they got a 2-year deal now. So I think he's just very much underappreciated. And then Joshua Bledsoe, like, he's fine as a depth piece, but he's more of a special teams ace than Brandon Schuler, who literally last year against the Dolphins, what was this, like Sunday Night Football week 2 or something? He races over from the sideline and blocks a field goal. He blocked a field goal from the sideline. Well, not from the sideline, but you get the point, hopefully. He ran off the sideline and still blocked a field goal. Never seen anything like it in my life. So, like, 4.25, Kyle Duggar, and then Jabril Peppers, who's just so underappreciated, in my opinion. Elite duo, but the depth is lacking here between Joshua Bledsoe and Brandon Schooler. Those are really just, yes, 2 elite special teamers, 2 ace special teamers, but, like, if one of Duggar or Peppers gets injured, like, you're kind of screwed, to put it mildly. So, yeah. 2, Miami Dolphins. Don't look at really 1 and 2 because I'm going to give the Miami Dolphins a 4.25 just like the Patriots. So I guess the Patriots and Dolphins are technically tied here at 1 because the Dolphins consist of 4.25, but they consist of Javon Holland, who I think is just as good, if not a tad better. I'd say he's comparable to Kyle Duggar. And then Jordan Poyer, who he's not as athletic and young as Jabril Peppers, obviously. And then, but I think the depth here of Marcus May and Elijah Campbell as an ace special teamer is better than, like, I think Marcus May is better depth piece than, like, Joshua Bledsoe and Brandon Schooler combined. So I'm going to give this a tie for all those reasons I just mentioned. I'll rehash them quick because I think Javon Holland and Kyle Duggar are at the very least comparable. And then Jordan Poyer and Jabril Peppers are pretty comparable other than the age and athleticism thing that goes to Peppers. And then Marcus May is a third safety, I think is better than Joshua Bledsoe and Brandon Schooler. And then Elijah Campbell, going into his 3rd year in the league, is turning into a special teams ace for the Dolphins. It's only a special team. 3, Bills. Bills Mafia, sorry, you're going to be really, really disappointed to hear this. I'm going to give our safety group a 3. It's average to me. Like, Taylor Rapp, I've said this before. I'm not really a Taylor Rapp fan. I appreciate it's a physicality, and I appreciate that he's one of the few players on the Bills that doesn't miss tackles at a very high rate at all. His missed tackle rate is below like 10%, so that's really good. But I don't know. He doesn't do this on purpose, obviously. I don't know if it's his fault, but there's a lot of friendly fire. He's just kind of like, not over exaggerates, but he over pursues a lot, and I really like his energy. But he over pursues. He's either injuring himself, or most of the time it's friendly fire, and he's injuring his teammates. So, his coverage ability is very hit or miss. Like, open field tackler, really good open field tackler, but his coverage ability is very, very hit or miss. So he's the definition of a strong safety. And then Colt Bishop, I'm still mulling over this draft pick. I don't know how to feel about this draft pick. I didn't at the time, and I still don't. I don't think he's going to have as big a role as some people are thinking in this predicament, in this spot, rather, I should say, rather. He's got too similar of a skill set to Taylor Rapp. I think there's more coverage upside with Cole Bishop, but he's very inconsistent in it, just like Taylor Rapp. And then Mike Edwards, who has really only been a 3rd safety in his career, and then he's going to start for the Chiefs, or Buccaneers and Chiefs, in order of that, respectively. But he's going to star opposite Taylor Rapp. So I don't really know how that will go, as he's kind of playing up a role, if you will. And then Cam Lewis and DeMar Hamlin. Cam Lewis, I think, is, safety to slot corner, outside corner behind him. He's an ace special team. And then DeMar Hamlin, don't overlook him, as I've said this multiple times the last couple of weeks. Few weeks, I should say. Don't overlook him as a possible starter next to Taylor Rapp, because Cole Bishop's a rookie. Taylor Rapp's probably likely to start at one of the spots. Cole Bishop's a rookie, and honestly, too similar of a skill set to Taylor Rapp. Mike Edwards has always been a third safety over his career, winning 2 Super Bowls with the Buccaneers and Chiefs respectively, but he's only been a third safety in his career, maybe an injury replacement here and there. Cam Lewis, I love the guy. I love me some Cam Lewis, but he's an ace special teamer mainly over his Bills career. He fits on defense here and there, only in certain packages though, ideally not. And they didn't really pay him like starter money, not even close to it. And then DeMar Hamlin, I think for all those reasons I just said, he could fit next to Taylor Rapp really nicely. And then 4, Jets, their safety room, I'm going to give it a 2.25. Like, they're easily the worst safety room in this entire division. Like, you have Chuck Clark. Like, okay, I thought that was an under-the-radar trade that the Jets made last offseason to acquire him from the Ravens. Will they give a 6th-round pick? I think it was even like a 7th-round pick swap. I don't even know. I really like that. Like, there's not a ceiling there, but, like, he was the reason that he pushed, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. The guy, oh, jeez. I can't believe Earl Thomas. I can't believe they forgot that. Legion of Boom. Earl Thomas. He pushed Earl Thomas out of Baltimore. Sure. Earl Thomas punched Chuck Clark in the face during practice, and then he got thrown out and kicked out of there. But Chuck Clark was just pretty clearly more talented than Earl Thomas at that point. But I don't know how he's going to do off his torn ACL. And then Tony Adams, who played decent enough last year, but he's a third special team safety. And then Ashton Davis, I really want him for the Bills, but no teams were lining up the door to pay him any sort of decent size contract, any sort of decent money for him to be a starting safety. He'll always be a third safety. Yes, he's an ace special teamer on kick and punt coverage units, but that's really not factored into this rating. And then Jarek Bernard, converse, I just put him here because they had no one else. So the starters are lacking, and the depth is severely lacking, in my opinion. But I'm going to say 2.25. But go sign Quandre Diggs, Eddie Jackson, Justin Simmons. I'm sure I'm missing a few more guys. The safety market is still alive and well there, Jets fans. Go get one if you're Robert Saleh and more specifically GM Joe Douglas. Okay, I know that was a long journey, but just like I did for the offense side of the ball last week, here are the AFC East defensive roster grades for 2024. I added them up between defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, cornerback, and safety, and this is what I came up with. Mathematically, the best defense in the AFC East is the Jets. Again, this is out of a possible 25. I think it's 5 times 5 is 25, possible 25 points. But the best, mathematically adding it all, the best defense in the whole AFC East, the whole division, is the New York Jets with a 20.75. But with only a 0.25 difference, I was very surprised to find that the Bills are still this close to the Jets. The Bills have a defensive rating of a 20.5 when it's all said and done. The reason I say I'm surprised that, even as a Bills fan, because we moved on from roster franchise cornerstone in the last handful of years. That Jordan Poyer gone, Micah Hyde gone, and Trey White gone. So, but we got a lot of youth and young players on defense, like Ed Alver, like Terrell Bernard. Not to mention a veteran like Matt Milano is coming back, and we'll see how Greg Rousseau develops. And please get, for the love of God, get anything from Von Miller. But 20.5 for the Bills in second. And then third, the Dolphins, a bit of a step down, but defense rating 19.5. And then fourth, the Patriots, 18.75. Now, last week it was 3 out of the 4 teams had really good offenses, and presumably really good offenses, and the Patriots had a presumably really bad offense. This week, today on this episode, I think these are all top 10 defensive units, top 10 defenses in the whole scope of the league. These are all 4: Bills, Jets, Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, top 10 defenses. They're all elite. They're great to elite defenses. I'll remind you one more time. best defenses in the AFC stacking up. Jets score 20.75. Second, Bills at 20.5 coming in. Third, Dolphins coming in 19.5. And then fourth, Patriots 18.75. But those are all very good defenses. In the case of the Jets, they're an elite defense. Next, AFC East roster grades 2024. If you want to go see the offensive breakdown, go back to last week's episode to get that offensive score there. But I don't want to say the offensive score here because you can go watch that. But this is how it's stacked up. Out of a possible 50 points, this is your total roster grade. So this is factoring in all 10 positions we did. I'll go over them quickly. QB, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. Finishing off with safety, the 10th position. So this is possible 50. 5 times 5 is 25 for each. 25 times 2 is 50. So coming in, the best roster still in the AFC East is the Buffalo Bills at a 41.25. And then second is the New York Jets at a 39.75. Third is the Miami Dolphins at a 37.25. And fourth is the Patriots at a 34. I want to give my quick takeaways with each of these teams. The Bills, even though they've had a lot of roster transition, they're still the class of the AFC East, in my opinion, until proven otherwise. 2, the Jets, elite defense, obviously, and elite offense if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy. 3, Dolphins. I think you can pretty easily argue that the Dolphins have more star power on offense than the Bills and Jets, but I don't think they're. But you could. I don't think there's well-rounded as those two, and they don't have as much depth. And then 4, Patriots. They're really weighed down by offense, but they have a really encouraging defense, close to elite, with guys coming back from injury like Matthew Judon and Christian Gonzalez and Josh Uche is a nice young speed rusher. So anyways, guys, I know that was a long journey between offense last week and defense this week, but there you go. I'm really excited for what the rest of the summer has in store. We are only a couple months away from Buffalo Bills football. Before you know it, preseason will be here. August 1st will be here for the NFL Hall of Fame game between the Bears and Texans. I cannot wait. Few plugs before I get out of here. You can follow me personally on Twitter at @Weingarten13. You can follow the show on Twitter for news, updates, scheduling information, like stuff like that. At Around Slice, you can, of course, watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And lastly, you can support me on Patreon if you want to get extra exclusive bonus content not found anywhere else. You can go to, for just $3 a month, you can subscribe to that Patreon page at patreon.com/aroundtheslice. Oh, and one more thing I almost forgot. I want to put together a sort of pre-Bills training camp Q&A. So any questions you got, whether you comment on the Twitter post I'm going to put up tomorrow, or you comment on this YouTube video, or any YouTube really, but mainly this one, I would greatly appreciate that. I'm trying to put together a nice little Q&A. If you have burning questions about specific players, specific coaching staff, anything, position, anything like that, record, whatever, give them to me, and I'll do in the next couple weeks a pre-training camp Q&A. Anyways, guys, I cannot wait. Training camp is just a couple weeks away, and now we're really ratcheting up the intensity. Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in today's episode of Around the Slice. It was a good one. See you next week.